Question number 5, the Honourable David Cunliffe.
Mr Speaker, to the Minister of Finance, what recent advice, if any, has he received outlining the effect of an increase in GST on families?
The Honourable Bill English.
Mr Speaker, that of course depends on what other tax changes might accompany a proposed increase in GST. During the third term of that member's government, GDP per capita dropped. That is, the average income per person fell, and that is bad for families.
The Honourable David Cunliffe.
Mr Speaker, how much will a mum and dad, both earning $48,000, have to pay in additional GST if GST is increased to 15%?
The Honourable Bill English.
I can't tell the member the answer to that because people don't pay GST on all their outgoings. Rents and interest payments don't carry GST, as do some other payments. And in any case, it makes no sense to make that calculation independent of other aspects of the tax package. And I thought the member would know not to get excited about this issue by the lack of excitement around his bus tour.
Yeah, that's right. The Honourable David Cunliffe. Order.
Speaker.
The Honourable David Cunliffe. Order.
Mr Speaker, to make it easy for the member, assuming that both
The member
parents,
will just ask his question.
assuming that both parents fully spent their income and were thus subject to GST on all of it, will this family, both earning $48,000, benefit from a 5% cut to the top tax rate, and if so, by how much?
The Honourable Bill English.
Mr Speaker, again, I can't answer that question, but I would say the member puts the case for axing the tax better than some of his colleagues. For instance, in Invercargill, he got a crowd of 8, whereas in Rotorua, Phil Goff only got 3.
Point of order, Mr.
Point of
Speaker.
order, the Honourable Steve Chadwick. Order.
Table the document covering the visit to Rotorua where he got a big crowd.
Order.
No.
I've got no idea what that point of order was, what alleged point of order was about. Order. I'm on my feet. And just because the member may not have agreed with something that was said, there's no grounds for a point of order, and the junior government whip should know that. Point of order, the Honourable Trevor Martin.
Mr. Speaker, I think we had a little bit of back and forth previously about things that were verified and things that were not, and for the leader, for the Deputy Prime Minister to make something up in that way, and for my colleague to offer to provide the evidence to show that he's not telling the truth, I think is something which is appropriate.
We've heard enough on this side, and I do accept the basis of the point of order from the Honourable Trevor Mallard, that gratuitous comments and answering questions are not helpful. I think anyone can see they're not helpful. At times, clever comments can add to the good humour of the House, but gratuitous and snide remarks don't help. The Honourable David Cunliffe, point of order.
Mr Speaker, in the previous 2 supplementaries, a simple arithmetic and very specific question was asked of the Minister of Finance. The first time he responded, sir, he alleged it was impossible to answer for a technical reason. That was covered off in the second supplementary. In both, sir, as you previously remarked, he attempted to avoid answering by making comments on a completely separate matter that you've just referred to. Mr Speaker, I seek leave to re-ask the previous supplementary in order to get a straight answer to it.
I listened very carefully to the Minister's answers, and what the Minister pointed out was that the questions the member asked, no precise answer could be provided to them because of the assumptions that would have to be made about where the supposed families spent their money. Even in the second question the member asked, if I remember correctly, it was about 2 parents earning $48,000 each spending all their income, but what the assumptions would have to be made about where that income was spent, because not all expenditure, of course, incurs GST. So the Minister gave a perfectly fair answer because he pointed out that there was no precise answer to the question. Speaking further, point of order, the Honourable David Cunliffe.
Mr Speaker, I concur with your judgment to the first of those supplementaries, sir, but on the second one, sir, the information was provided to the Minister that in the scenario, all of the income was spent on GST-able items and therefore would be subject to the full rate. The point is that the Minister made no attempt, armed with that assumption, to even begin to answer the question and then divert it to comments about meetings in Rotorua. And, Mr Speaker, you've previously ruled that ministers given straight questions are obliged to give straight answers.
Order.
We have made every attempt to give straight
I
questions.
hear the member, and had he lodged that question as a primary question, I'd have backed him. But to expect the minister to do a computation over an example plucked out of the air for a supplementary question, I just think is unreasonable. And supplementary question, the Honourable David Cunliffe.
Supplementary. Mr Speaker, would the minister compensate the hypothetical family for both the increase in GST and the resulting increase in inflation, estimated by Westpac and the Reserve Bank Governor to be a further 2%?
The Honourable Bill English.
Mr Speaker, we won't be compensating hypothetical families, we'll be compensating actual families, and there's a range of tools available, from adjustments in benefit levels, adjustments in national super, adjustments in working for families payments, and reductions in income tax rates.
Point of order, the Honourable David Cunliffe.
I regret to detain the House, but the question was again very specific. It was around the consequential effects of inflation, to which specific estimates have been given within the last week. The Minister did not refer to inflation in his response, which was continuously meaningless.
Well, order. I think the member's asking too much of the supplementary question. If he thinks back to a supplementary question, I don't think the only part of it related to inflation. I think there was a further element to the question. And the Minister's not obliged to answer every part of the question. I think the Minister did give a reasonable answer to that question. Amy Adams.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. To the Minister, how will the government make the tax system fairer?
The Honourable Bill English.
Mr Speaker, fairness is one of the principal objects of the government in making any tax changes. We have inherited... The members opposite should be careful in their criticism, because on their watch they changed tax rates in a way which encouraged people to avoid paying those tax rates, to the extent that, for instance, the number of wealthy New Zealanders paying tax on $1 million didn't change in 9 years under Labor, despite the fact that the economy grew, which simply made the point that for very high income earners the tax rate was essentially voluntary.
The Honourable David Cunliffe.
Mr Speaker, taking the Minister at his word, after compensation, who would be better off? A family of two earners on $48,000 or a single earner on $1 million, and by roughly how much?
The Honourable Prime Minister.
Well, Mr Speaker, that will depend on the individual circumstances. What's that? Yeah. That will depend...
My apologies.
That will depend on the individual circumstances. For instance, government has made it clear it is going to extend the tax base by lifting the effective tax rates on property. So and the ownership of property is generally related to people's level of income. So higher income New Zealanders will pay more GST if GST goes up, are likely to pay less income tax if income tax rate's down, and could end up paying more tax on property that they own or sell.
Question number 6, Shane Arden.
Thank you, Mr.